Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. A special thank you to Ilas Ahavat Zion for letting us participate in this Ilas Yisrael. I'd like to welcome Rabbi Wein. I want to say that one of the greatest honors of my life was about 27 or 28 years ago when Rabbi Wein entrusted me to be his successor at the Torah in Muncie. And this was a very beautiful shul and a beautiful group of people, some of them here tonight. And most importantly, it was literally the handiwork of Rabbi Wein putting together this beautiful kehillah. So I was very honored by that, and I still continue to be honored. And thank you, Rabbi Wein. And from that, in a way, came this kehillah. So we all appreciate you. Rabbi Wein is known to everybody already as probably one of the most articulate voices in Orthodox Judaism. Great Talmud Chacham, an expert in Jewish history, as everyone knows, a Maariv, a sage. But there's even more important reason why everyone should pay a very careful attention when Rabbi Wein speaks. And the reason is that in every generation, since Moshe Rabbeinu, besides the great Talmidei Chachamim, great speakers, great poskim, there were the Balei Masorah. And the Balei Masorah were able to tell the people what we did in the past and what we should do in the future. They had a kind of a view, a look of understanding history and what the Jewish people was supposed to look like and how not to go away from that path. And these Balei Masorah, they kept the Jewish people honest because for so many generations we tried to go this way and go that way, and new movements, and it was the Balei Masorah that kept us on track. And more than ever, during these very difficult times that we're going through, the Jewish people here in Eretz Yisrael, we need that type of direction. Rabbi Wein is one of these Balei Masorah, and very excited that Rabbi Wein is here with us tonight. And I thank you, Rabbi Wein, for honoring our kehillah. Rabbi Wein will speak.
Erev Tov, everyone. I want to especially thank my colleague and friend, Rabbi Haber and his Rebbitzin, for their friendship over the years, and for, you only get one thank you. We go back a long time together, and I am thrilled to see this kehillah and this Beit Knesset. I saw it when it was raw, to put it mildly, and to see it now in its tiferet is a nachat ruach for me and for Klal Yisrael. For the past 200 years, the Jewish people, in fits and starts and spurts, with setbacks and advances, have returned to Eretz Yisrael and built a society and a state and an entity here in the Holy Land. If we look at it in historic terms, the way we should look at it, so this has to border on the miraculous. Haniyok hadover hazeh, has this ever happened before? Did any nation that was destroyed twice, went into exile, scattered over the face of the earth, without power and influence, should rise up, return to their homeland, renew an ancient language, and be active in building a Jewish society? That has to strike us. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say most, but much of the Jewish world is blind to that because it doesn't fit their narrative. It isn't the way they want it to be. The perverse thing about heaven is that it does not conform to our narratives. Kaviyachol, the Ashgoch, and I don't speak for God. I always say that he has not spoken to me in the last 2 weeks, so I don't know anything more than you do. But there are certain things that should be obvious. And one of them is Eretz Yisrael in the Jewish state. And it fits no narrative. It has a narrative of its own. Now, history is not merely events, dates, places. History is people. The story of people. And people have within themselves nobility and pettiness, greatness and foolishness, errors and accomplishments. And people are the instruments, kaviyachol, that heaven uses to exert its will in the world. Harbe shluchim lamokom, the Gemara teaches us. God has many messengers. And they are not the people that you would pick to be the messengers. So, in my old age, I've thought about the matter a lot. And I came up with the idea that is the foundation of this book, which all of you will buy. And it's the story of 8 people from 1830 till our day almost, who through their lives built the Jewish commonwealth here in the land of Israel. Now, if you took these 8 people and put them together in a room, they would not get along. They didn't get along when they were alive. You could not pick 8 more disparate people. And yet, looking at the picture, it's hard to imagine how we would be here without each of these 8 people contributing in their role to the rebirth of the people of Israel and the land of Israel. So that's the structure of the book. The lives of these 8 people as it related to the people of Israel and the land of Israel, and how to look at it as a whole, how to put the whole puzzle together. It's the parable of the three sightless men and the elephant. So one sees a trunk, and one sees the tusks, and one sees the tail, but no one sees the elephant. So in the 1830s and 50s and 60s, there was a Jew in Lithuania that was the Rav in Volozhin, and the Rosh Yeshiva of the great yeshiva Volozhin, which is the mother of all the yeshivot that exist today. One way or another, they are all influenced, if not copies, of Volozhin, even though there was only one Volozhin. My Zayde was a product of the Volozhiner yeshiva. So when he talked about Volozhin, I had Volozhin firsthand. I don't think there's anybody around today that can make that statement. The Rosh Yeshiva was a man called Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. And he was known by his acronym Netziv. He was the Netziv. He was an enormous Talmud Chacham. We have his Sforim, his commentary to Chumash, the Amik Dover. We have his Tshuvos. We have his Perushim to Shas. But as my Zayde told me a long time ago, we don't have him. Because he said he was so multifaceted that you couldn't put him in any box. So there arose a movement in Litta, the Talmidim of the Gaon of Vilna, that picked up and moved there to Israel. Never was a big movement. 300 families, maybe 500 families. It's one apartment building in Ramat, Beit Shemesh. They couldn't afford it either. And there arose in Litta a group of people, most of whom were not observant, but somehow felt that they had an obligation to support these people because these people represented the Jewish foothold in the land of Israel. No one then dreamt of a state. No one then dreamt of having power. It's just that Jews were going to be able to live there. And the Ottoman Turks didn't want the Jews to live there. And they caused them enormous problems. But there was a slow trickle of Jews from Eastern Europe, again, mainly Lithuania, but later Chassidim from Poland as well, who came to Eretz Israel. They settled in Tzfat, in Tveria, in Hebron, mainly in the old city of Yerushalayim. They're known as the Yishuv HaYoshon, the old Yishuv. The first ones, the pioneers. They're the first ones that built outside the walls of the city. They're the ones that built Meir Shorim and Nachal Shiva. So they have to be supported. How do you support them? So they made always you make an organization. And the organization was called the Chovevei Zion, the lovers of Zion. The titular head of the Chovevei Zion was the Netziv. So he lent gravitas to the movement. If the Netziv was the head of it, then it was probably all right. And the Chovevei Zion raised money, sent it illegally because you couldn't send from Russia to Turkey. But they got a way of bringing the money in, and it was divided amongst the Jews who lived there. There never was enough money. There never is, right? All of economics is the law of scarcity. There's never enough to go around. But it kept the issue going. There was no economy, and most of the people, there were small tradesmen, and there were people that had stores, but most of them had nothing. They didn't work. They were supported by this Chalukah system, which the Netziv lent his name to and his efforts to. The Netziv's eldest son, Reb Chaim Berlin, who was the Rav in Moscow, early on left his position and moved to the old city of Yerushalayim. When Volozhin closed, the Russian government closed it because it was subversive. So the Netziv wanted to move to Eretz Yisrael. He wanted to join his son in Yerushalayim. He took with him, there were 10, 12 of the students of Volozhin that were not married or didn't have family, etc., so they were going to accompany him to Eretz Yisrael. Mazeda was one of them. They got as far as Warsaw, and he was going to go from Warsaw to Odessa. In Odessa, you got the boat across the Black Sea. You ended up in Turkey, and between the railroad and other ways, you eventually got there to Israel. In Warsaw, the Netziv suffered a stroke. And 6 months later, he passed away. He's buried on the Warsaw Cemetery. I saw his grave. He's buried together with Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, his grandson-in-law. The 10 Talmidim kept on going. My grandfather kept on going. He got married, he came to Yerushalayim. Eventually, he built a yeshiva in Yafo. He was chavrusas with Rav Kook. And then they sent him to America to raise money, and he stayed in America. So the Netziv is the cornerstone of this story. And we'll talk about what happened with him in the Chovevei Zion now in the next section of the book, which is about somebody as far away from the Netziv as you can get. Baron Edmund de Rothschild. Now, the original Rothschild, Anshel Meir Rothschild, had 5 sons. He sent each of his sons to a different capital city in Europe. That's how they made international banking. They did business amongst themselves because they trusted themselves. So one was in Naples, and one was in Vienna, and one was in Frankfurt, and one was in Paris, and one was in London. The concept of international banking did not exist then. Banking was all local to where you were. If you were in England, you couldn't do banking in France, especially since England and France always were at war with each other. But if you were the Rothschild brothers, you could do business with your brother. and therefore they built for themselves a financial empire. Now, the London Rothschild was an observant Jew. Nathan, they didn't do business on Shabbos. The Frankfurt Rothschild, William, was an observant Jew and a great supporter of Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. You can't be Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch without financial backing. That's one of the rules in life, whether we like it or not. So he had with William Rothschild so he could have an independent kehillah and he could get the Germans to do what he wanted. The Baron in France, James Rothschild, was not an observant Jew at all. Was an assimilated Jew. However, he insisted that his children not intermarry. And he insisted that they did not convert. But that was it. He had a grandson, Edmund de Rothschild, who's coming from 3 generations of assimilated Jews in France. He's 29 years old. He's got $1 trillion. He's not interested to be a banker. It's one of the phenomena with the children of the rich that many times they, so to speak, give up the business, sometimes out of guilt. That's where you get all the great foundations. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the Ford Foundation. Because Balzac said correctly that behind every great fortune is a great crime. So the Baron was looking for something to do, looking for a cause. We are all looking always for a cause. That's how we identify ourselves. There's a Jew in Eastern Europe that's the Rav of Bialystok. Rabbi Shmuel Moelever, big Talmid Chacham. He's the executive secretary of the Polish of the Chovevei Tzion. All fundraisers are able to detect rich people. And he hears that somehow there's a baron in France that's looking for a cause. Now, this is an unlikely story, right? So he decides he's going to go visit the baron and tell him the cause should be the building of Jewish colonies in the land of Israel. As wild a scheme as you can imagine in the 1870s. He doesn't speak French. The Baron doesn't speak Yiddish. Somehow they communicate. And the Baron becomes enamored of the idea. That's a great idea. This is the cause he's looking for. He's going to build agricultural colonies in the land of Israel so the Jews can come and work the land. And the Bialystok Rav promises him he'll send them the Jews from Eastern Europe. You put up the money, we'll send you the people. That's the deal. And in his lifetime, the Baron builds 39, but then they call them colonies. I don't know what we would call them today, settlements, whatever pejorative word you want to use for Jews building. And many of them are major cities today. Rishon LeZion, Zichron Yaakov, Binyamina, Maskeret Batya, Rehovot. Today you'll see skyscrapers, populations in the hundreds of thousands. The Baron made a wine company called Carmel. He called it Carmel East, Carmel Mizrahi, because Carmel West was the Baron's wine company in France, which made better wine, or more expensive wine. The first bottle of wine manufactured by Carmel, the Baron sent as a gift to the Netziv in Volozhin. Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein, the nephew of the Netziv, who wrote the famous Torah Tmima and the Makor Baruch. So he writes that when the bottle of wine came to the Netziv in Volozhin, the Netziv went into the bedroom and changed into his Bigdei Shabbat in honor of a bottle of wine manufactured by Jews with all the mitzvos atluyot ba'oretz accomplished within it. So today we're fine schmeckers. You know, South African, Argentinian, Chile, French, this one, that one. Macht sich narrisch. So the second person is the Baron. And the Baron, in his ethical will, he's buried here on his estate overlooking the Mediterranean. He writes that he thanks the God of Israel for the opportunity to see the beginnings of the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, and that the Lord gave him the opportunity to participate in it. The Rothschilds descended from the Baron till today. The Knesset was built by the Rothschild family, the Knesset building. We're the only country in the world that schnorred the Parliament building. The Supreme Court building in Yerushalayim is the Rothschilds. The new National Library is the Rothschilds. Halo Doverhu. However, the Baron opened up Pandora's box, because now that there was a wine company and there was agriculture and there were Jewish farmers, the question of Shemitah arose. What do you do in a Shemitah year? So the farmers told the Baron, we're taking a year off. Just send a check. The Baron felt he was being played. He said, they're not going to work and I'm going to pay? He said, I closed down the whole project. The Chovevei Tzion were in panic. Without the Baron, they didn't see how they could go forward. So Rabbi Shmuel Moel Ever mobilized Rabbi Yisrael Chonon and Rav David Tevel Minsker and other Gedolim of the time, and they came up with the creative idea of the Heter Mechira. Most of the poskim agreed to it. However, the main dissenter was the Netziv of Volozhin, who was the head of the Chovevei Zion, because he said Shemitah in our time is only a d'Rabbanan, but selling land in the land of Israel to non-Jews is a lav d'oraisa of lo sechonim. So he said it's like running away from the bear into the, running away from the lion into the arms of the bear. And that created a split which exists until today. Today it has not only halachic overtones, but it has political overtones as well. I don't expect that this book will settle the problem. But I find comfort in old problems. I remember when we were very young in the yeshiva, and we first discovered that there were creatures in the world that were girls. So the Rebbe said to us in his inimitable style, he said, boys, you should know they existed before you. And you listen to what older people have to say about it, and you'll be all right. An old problem's an old problem, all right. And old problems don't always get solved. That's also all right. The third person involved here is Theodor Herzl, who is certainly way out of the box. His grandfather was a Rav in Bosnia, but his father was completely assimilated. Herzl never had a bar mitzvah. Herzl himself advocated that the solution to the Jewish problem was that the Jews should convert to Christianity. And he said the rabbis should lead them to the baptismal fount. He was an op-ed writer and a drama critic for a large newspaper in Vienna, the New Free World. The New Free World was owned by Jews. It was the newspaper of record in Europe. It's like the New York Times. They're really great resemblances. And the New Free World was anti-Jewish. It was anti-anything that was good for the Jews. It advocated, again, complete assimilation. In 1890, there's a trial in France. France had lost a war in 1870 to Prussia, and France was convinced that they lost the war because the Prussians had a spy that knew their plans and how the army would be laid out. And they finally pinned the traitor to be a Jew, the one Jew that was on the general staff of the French army, Alfred Dreyfus. You can't make up these stories, right? We were only 3 people in already, and how did this happen? So Dreyfus is accused of being the traitor. He's being tried by a French court. And the newspaper sends Herzl as its correspondent to cover the trial. And Herzl, for the first time, sees a mob of 50,000 Frenchmen shouting death to the Jews. And he asks himself, why this anti-Semitism? What did the Jews do? And he comes to the conclusion that anti-Semitism is because the Jewish people do not have a state. If they had a state, they would have a language, they would have a culture, they would have an Olympics team. It would be all right. His famous comparison was to Guatemala. Nobody hates Guatemala. Except for the Guatemalans, but... So we'd be like Guatemala. Give us a state. And Herzl is a great organizer, and he's a great visionary. And somehow, out of this idea, the Zionist movement is born. Practical Zionism. Not religious, but practical. And Herzl tours Europe to gain the approval of the major powers, and he's looking for a major power that will sponsor a Jewish settlement. Now, to Herzl, it didn't have to be in Palestine. When the British Foreign Secretary offered in 1904 Uganda, Herzl accepted it. Good, he said, we'll take Uganda. We could have had Idi Amin as our president. And the Zionist Congress passed a resolution put through by Herzl to adopt Uganda. The only problem was that the British didn't own Uganda to give it to anybody. And Herzl died immediately afterwards. And from then on, Zionism is Eretz Yisrael, nothing else. But Herzl had a tremendous effect on the Jewish people. And he was a lightning rod for controversy and remains so until today. But it's hard to imagine our existence here in the land of Israel today without the fact that there was a Theodor Herzl. After Herzl died, so there comes an Eastern European Jew who becomes westernized and goes to university in Berlin. He becomes a chemist, Chaim Weizmann. And Weizmann becomes the head of the Zionist movement. Weizmann is convinced that the only way there can be a Jewish commonwealth in the land of Israel is that an empire has to sponsor it. And the empire that he chose was the British Empire. And he lived in England. He was a chemist in England. He had connections in England. He's looking for England somehow to say, we'll sponsor it. Because then he says it'll happen. Also a wild idea. Why should England do something? The First World War comes. It's 3 years into the war, 1917. It's all stalemated. 20 million people have been killed already. America is not in the war yet. But America is financing both sides. Wall Street is making money. And in the eyes of the world then, as perhaps even now, Wall Street, those are the Jews. The Jews are the world's financiers. And therefore, we have to somehow get American capital not to support the Kaiser, but to support the Allies. How to do that? You do that through the Jews. Now, all of this is ludicrous, right? But most of the world is ludicrous. There are a few pockets of sanity. Rabbi Haber's shul, my shul, but basically the world is nuts. And because of that, Arthur Balfour, who's the foreign secretary for His Majesty's government, issues an ambiguous letter, in which he says, he addresses it to Lord Rothschild, that His Majesty's government views with favor the establishment of a Jewish homeland in the land in Palestine, and will use all of its endeavors to facilitate it. But then he says, all of this, however, if it doesn't in any way impinge on the rights of anybody else. Well, at this point, the Jews are 10% of the population in Palestine, 90% are Muslim, and they're not in favor. Weizmann will devote the rest of his life in attempting to enlist Britain to help. Only at the end, when it's obvious that Britain is on the other side, so he's old and broken and sightless, but the state comes into being against Britain's wishes. And he is given the honor of being the first president of the state of Israel. There's a Russian Jew completely assimilated. By the name of Vladimir Jabotinsky. He's a great orator. He hates the socialists. Weizmann was a socialist. The foundation of this country was socialists, if not even more left. And he creates what he calls revisionist Zionism. It's Zionism against socialism, and he makes a few very bold but dark predictions. He says Weizmann is all wet, he doesn't know what he's talking about. England will never support a Jewish state in the land of Israel. You're barking up the wrong tree. The second thing he says is the Arabs will never accept a Jewish state. They will fight and fight and fight. And if you want a Jewish state, then you have to fight and fight and fight. And if you're not willing to fight, then let's give it up now. He eventually achieves about 20% in the Zionist Congress, 20% representation. But the Zionist Congress is overwhelmingly socialist, and it overwhelmingly believes with Weizmann that through the British mandate, the state will come into being. They were encouraged, the British appointed a Jew, Lord Herbert Samuel, to be the first High Commissioner of Palestine. The Jews said he's the second Nehemiah. It didn't turn out to be that way at all. And beginning in 1920, and then 23, 26, 29, 33, 36, 39, there were what today we call the Intifada. Arab riots all over the country. Jews murdered. That gave credence to Jabotinsky's ideas. In the First World War, Jabotinsky organized a Jewish legion to fight on the side of the Allies against Germany. Many of the people of the Jewish Legion who had experience in battle, he now mobilized, and out of it came a militia called the Irgun Tzvai Leumi, the Etzel. The socialist parties in Israel also created a militia called the Haganah, which was larger, which was meant to fight the Arabs, whereas Etzel was meant to fight the British. So Jabotinsky was a prophet, but he foresaw the Holocaust. He said the Jews in Europe are on a tinderbox. They have to get out. But in the 1920s, people didn't believe him. He's completely secular. There's no connection to religion whatsoever. But fully half of the revisionist Zionist party were religious Jews, because he struck a chord within them. And the Etzel, to a large extent, was composed of yeshiva students from Yerushalayim. So now you have Jabotinsky in the mix. Now comes a pivotal figure, a Polish Jew by the name of David Green, who changed his name to Ben Gurion, taking a name from the Talmud. Ben Gurion was the master politician, and he was the master organizer. He created a labor union here, the Histadrut, that ran the country till the 1970s. He created a health system which pretty much is the health system that we have today, with all of its bureaucracy, but with the fact that we do have a health system. And he was a confirmed socialist, but he was not a Marxist. And that was a major, major difference. And he mobilized the Jewish population in the land of Israel and Jews throughout the world to support a Jewish state, which came into being after the Second World War and after the Holocaust. I heard a great lecture from Rabbi Soloveitchik, Zichrono Livracha. He was talking about the state, etc., he made a point which resonates within me till today. He said the United Nations was formed by heaven for only one reason: to create the state of Israel. You had to have that the nations of the world should agree. So it was created for that purpose. It fulfilled that purpose. The rest of it is garbage. So that's a hashkafa, that's a worldview of things. Without Ben Gurion, it's hard to imagine the state. The final vote, there were 10 people on the National Council as to whether to declare the state. The vote was 6-4. You have to realize how ridiculous it was. 600,000 people against 30 million. Against England, America, as per usual, you couldn't count on it. This is not the first time America has embargoed arms. They did that in the 1940s. And he declared himself the defense minister. He created the army. And all of his life he searched for something. Never found it. That's why he tried Buddhism and yoga and other mishugas. He's looking for something to satisfy his soul. I think in Kabbalah they call that the neshama artiloi. It's a soul that's just floating around looking for something. We know such people. So he made Mapai, and then he broke with Mapai. He made his own party. He broke with them. He retired to live on a kibbutz in the middle of the Negev, Sde Boker. He said prophetically that the Six-Day War and the Israeli victory would provoke more problems than the Jews ever imagined. So he's part of the mix too. Without him, it wouldn't have happened. Which brings us, therefore, to a man by the name of Louis Brandeis, who was a Jew living in Louisville, Kentucky. Brandeis had an Orthodox uncle, and he spent many a Shabbat with his uncle. And he writes almost in longing in his diary that he so appreciated and envied his uncle the serenity of his Sabbath. But he said, I would accept it only without its restrictions. Not realizing that it was the restrictions that gave it the serenity. Brandeis was a famous labor lawyer. He was a Democrat, and he was a strong supporter of Woodrow Wilson. And in 1916, there was a vacancy on the United States Supreme Court. there never had been a Jew appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States until then. Wilson appointed Brandeis. Now, Brandeis was a fervent Zionist. Hard to understand why, but he was. In fact, when on his confirmation hearing in the United States Senate, he said that he would resign from every organization that he belonged to so as not to appear biased on the court. He said, except for the Zionist Federation. And what he accomplished was, without seemingly doing so, he legitimized Zionism to the American Jewish community. He made it kosher, because until then it wasn't kosher, because the Reform were against it. The Orthodox had no power. The official Jewish establishment in the United States was completely assimilationist. The Zionists had almost no foothold here. There was a Mizrahi that Rabbi Berlin founded, but basically it was very weak. Even the Zionists, the general Zionists were weak. Brandeis made it legitimate. You could be a Zionist and be a good American. Oh, good, so that's what we're going to do. Brandeis suffered tremendous anti-Semitism on the court. There were members of the Supreme Court that Brandeis, in almost 20 years on the court, they never spoke to him. A southern judge by the name of McHenry, who was a rabid anti-Semite. So we've been there before too. Doesn't make it nice now, but we've been there before. So it could be, a case can be made that without Brandeis, there never would have been the support of the American Jewish community that there was, and we all know it was that support that drove the creation of the State of Israel and its maintenance. And today, that support is weak, with all the concomitant problems and results. So you got to add Brandeis to the mix too. And then I want to conclude by mentioning Menachem Begin. Begin is an Eastern European Jew to the core. He was a disciple of Jabotinsky. He was the head of the European youth movement of Beitar, which was affiliated with the revisionist Zionist movement. He was drafted into the Polish army. In the 1930s, the Polish army drafted hundreds of thousands of Jews. So on the surface, that looks like a negative. But the Jews that were drafted into the Polish army later on survived, as I'll tell you in a minute. I'll tell you a story you like stories, I'll tell you. A Jew that I knew in Detroit. So he was a Talmud in the Mir Yeshiva in 1933 or 32. And he got his notice from the Polish army that he should come by and they're going to induct him in the army. So he went to the Chofetz Chaim to ask for a bracha that he shouldn't go to the army. I heard this story from the man himself. I could tell you his name, but I don't want to. So the Chofetz Chaim said to him, no, there have to be Jews in the Polish army as well. And he left crestfallen. And he was drafted into the army. And he served as a medic in the Polish army for 3 years. And then he was discharged and he was in the reserve. When Hitler invaded Poland, they called up all the reserves. He went back in the army. The Polish army was taken prisoner, half the Polish army, by the Russians, because Russia had a pact with Germany. And Russia took over the eastern part of Poland and of the Baltic states. All the Polish prisoners were sent to the Gulag, including my friend from Detroit and Menachem Begin, among others. Well, he weren't expected to come back from the Gulag. But in 1941, Hitler invaded Russia. When Hitler invaded Russia, Russia needed England, needed Winston Churchill. And Churchill said, the condition that will help you, will send you arms, is that you free the Polish army. Send it to the Middle East, and we'll use it to fight in the Middle East and in Italy. So 130,000 Polish soldiers were released and made their way to the Middle East. My friend from Detroit was one of them. Menachem Begin was one of them. On the way to the Middle East, they came to Palestine. A lot of the Jews disappeared. They didn't go the rest of the way with the Polish army. The Polish army fought in Italy, in Monte Cassino, and other battles. But Begin stayed in Eretz Yisrael. And Begin became the head of the Irgun. And he was determined to drive the English out of the country. I heard this from the Ponevezh Rav himself. I heard it in 1946 when he visited Chicago and he spoke in the yeshiva. So he said then that there were 7 Jews in prison in Jerusalem. The 7 were from the Irgun, that are determined to drive the British out of the land of Israel. And he said they will be successful. They will drive the British out. He said, if I had 7 people who were as devoted to building a Torah state as these 7 are to drive out the British, we could build a Torah state. I remember it till today. He said, but I don't have those 7. So the Eitzel conducted an underground war against the British. They blew up the King David Hotel. All sorts of terrible things happened. War is terrible. There's no nice way to run a war. And we're experiencing that. We have to accept that. And we have to win. When the state was declared, the Irgun still existed. Ben-Gurion was determined that there should not be any independent armed militias in the country. Begin attempted to bring in arms for the Irgun on a ship called the Altalena. Ben-Gurion ordered the Israeli army to fire upon that ship. The commander who fired upon it was Yitzhak Rabin. A number of Irgun soldiers were killed, but Begin immediately disbanded the Irgun. He said there cannot be two militias, and we're not going to have a civil war. Begin ideologically opposed everything that Ben-Gurion represented. Begin ideologically opposed reparations from Germany. He was expelled from the Knesset because of his behavior to protest. Ben-Gurion never called him by name. He would say, the member of Knesset sitting next to Mr. Goldberg. But Begin persisted and eventually rose to power and changed the face and the politics of Israel so that it became eventually a free market, venture capital country. Still has not lost much of its socialist overlay, but it certainly is not what it was. And Ben-Gurion, to his credit, aligned Israel with the West in the Cold War and not with Moscow. And that was a great disappointment to Stalin because he was convinced that the Jews were communists. And that's part of the enmity of the Soviet Union to the state of Israel, which the residue of which is still throughout the world. So here you have all of these disparate people that don't even talk to each other. You put it together in the puzzle, and you see the picture. This is how we got here. Now, it's very strange. And again, it's not the narrative that we would have written, but basically it's written for us. So that's what the book attempts to do, give you a picture of each of these 8 people and give you a picture of how they, together, we can see the story. I think it's an important book. I think everyone should read it. I think your children should read it, your grandchildren. They have no concept of what's going on, of how we got here. And I therefore took the liberty of writing it. And I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. And if you want me to sign the book, I'll be happy to do so. And you know that in 200 years, my signature will be worth something. Be well, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Beautiful. Stop.
me from all the times I listened to your tapes. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
What?
Okay. Oh, okay.
Good with me.
Very safe.
I'm leaving this on, not the mic.
Oh, hi, Larry, how are you?
He's saying this whole
First name basis.
Can you put Twitter on? You'll put it, I don't see you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rabbi Wein.
Huh? This, I want to say something before you go. This thing is like holding on by a thread. If you knock it, it'll fall off. It needs a better solution.
Thank you.
Pleasure as always.
This, and this, inside that clip is a screw. And it's like not holding.
Make this time right.
Fall off.
Chef, she's only 2 down for a short now. If you can.
Our chef, hot chef.
Yes, but chef. And, Sure, thank you. Come on.
I enjoyed your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm a friend of Sori's from his exercise class.
Wonderful.
She's terrific.
She really is. She really is. Thank you.
I once ran into one of Alfred Dreyfus's cousins in Beitar Illy.
Yeah.
And he said one of Dreyfus's descendants was learning in yeshiva. And another guy, one of his, as similar as he was, one of his descendants was learning in yeshiva.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
I'm reading it on my grandson's reading.
Good.
Rabbi Wein, you helped me to build a Kirov organization in England. You introduced me to the Wolfson in 2000.
Yes.
And they gave over $500,000 to this organization. It was all through you.
Thank you.
We had 500 boys and girls went to Yeshiva and Seminary. We never knew anything about Yiddishkeit.
Wonderful.
But that all came through you.
Thank you.
Ryan and Sharon Duffel made Aliyah from the young Israel of Lawrence Cedarhurst a few months ago.
Your daughter and son-in-law, my rough, and
And
I visit every one of your grandchildren's weddings and heard you speak as a couple. They're all amazing.
the radical Haredi community we see today. Is that a continuation of the students of the Ramadan and the revolution?
No, not at all.
No,
Did anything like that ever exist in Europe? Or that continuation of any?
Satmar existed in Europe.
How did it happen that the Haredim in Israel have become so radicalized?
Politics.
Do you mind signing this one for me too? This is Danny Stam's book.
I didn't hear you.
This is Danny Stam's book.
Good, good.
I wanted to tell you the first time I ever met you in person was when you were signed like for his son's bris.
This one's for Yaacov Haber.
They were supposed to give it to
I'm gonna get my money back.
Get your money back, please.
They bring the one on anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I took a picture, show it to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah.
Providing the venue.
Oh, yes, please.
Rabbi Haber, you know that when Moshe Rabbeinu descended from Sinai, a Jew came up to him and said, "Can we take a picture?"
Selfie, yeah.
My husband's so sorry he couldn't come. He listens to your share every week. If you
That's
would write
wonderful.
like your Monday would make him so happy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Write whatever you want. I can't
okay.
see.
Oh,
Good evening, it's Gila.
Hi. How are you?
Yes, I very much enjoyed that share.
Thank you.
I thought that my brain will be able to take it all in.
I enjoyed your
You read the book, you remember everything.
Thank you, Rabbi Wein.
I remember it from our Shemesh years ago when you used to give the
There's the history.
Great process. First finding and then persuading them to say yes.
If you can put in a good word, then it will ease it. Like buying the house in Hendon, we had tremendous power.
I'll speak to your mother, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Wein, for everything you've taught me and continue to teach me. I love all your shiurim so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Wein. Remember to take a picture, please. You want a picture with you? Is that okay? Sure. Yeah. Touch the dot. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Rabbi, the books are all sold out. Can I order a signed one online?
What do you mean the books are all sold
No,
out?
they've been sold out for 20 minutes.
They were all sold.
I want to order a signed one.
Picking it up.
If people want,
Sorry, take down their name.
take down their names and we'll get
Maybe this
books.
is Rabbi Haber.
Give him back his
No,
$100.
that means there's one extra.
My son gave it to him.
Oh,
His son bought one.
You want to give one to Rabbi Haber, right?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. His son gave
Rabbi Haber. Rabbi Haber.
Rabbi Haber.
You try to look for the work. You try to take a picture.
This one's for you.
On the side. What I wanted to one on anti-Semitism.
I think it's in the front if there's anything left. I think, is that the one that you had asked?
That's what I asked for.
Can I do the photo work, so if you don't mind?
Okay.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
Rabbi.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I should have bought 20
How do you
from the
relate
beginning.
to
and
the
told them
He
to
had
go.
one in his backpack. He
Soldiers
gave
and
it to
then
me. But then he said, oh,
Thank you very much.
They don't get it, so there's nothing to talk about it.
They're worried that the kids will join the army.
that's what he said.
Not that
Thank you very much, Rabbi Wein.
My pleasure. Thank
Friend
you.
of service, my son and Ephraim were
Good. Ephraim had a baby now.
I
Can
know, Mazel Tov, Mazel
He wants a
Tov.
picture.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
It's my husband, Mark.
Rabbi Wein, Aaron Campfit, how's the roll?
Okay.
Yeah, we've run out of books, so the question is, can I make an appointment to see you? You can sign it in person, and then I get to speak to you anyway for a couple of minutes.
Well, I have to leave. Yes, you can call me. You know.
Okay. And then I, in your Shalim, perhaps see you for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, sure.
All right, Shka, thank you very much. The series and Avi was tremendous as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, they're out of Yom Migot here.